Awesome. Well, welcome in again. Thank you for joining us today. Again, my apologies for any Zoom link chaos. Zoom just does that to us sometimes, and we made it through. You all made it. Thank you. So we're going to get going. Today is the serving specific student and family populations. This is the third time that we are offering this session. And we will offer it one more time before September. I don't remember exactly when, but it will happen again. Quick introduction on who we are. My name is Joey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Education Strategy Specialist with Building Changes, and I'll pass it to Sammy.
Morning, everyone. My name is Sammy Iverson. I work for Building Changes as the Senior Manager Education Strategy. I use she, her pronouns. Happy to be here with you all today. And I'll pass to Kayla.
Good morning. My name is Kayla Blau. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a consultant with Building Changes.
Thank you. All right. We want to start today with a land acknowledgement. So we would like Building Changes and my co-facilitators and I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit the area today. Building Changes, though we work statewide, our physical office is located on the land of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people. Sammy has dropped a link in the chat to for you to see whose land you are on. Even if you have gone to this link before, I do recommend doing it again. They recently did some updates to their system, so there are actually new tribal affiliations associated with different parts of the state. So please take a moment to look at that. And when we ask you to introduce yourself in the chat momentarily, we would love for you to include that as well. All right, so like I said, if you could all take some time to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be awesome. So please let us know your name, your pronouns if you're comfortable, your role and organization or school district, and then whose land you are joining from today. And we'll just kind of see that waterfall through the chat, and we'll get a feel for who's in the space. While you are typing that out, I'm going to cover a few other Zoom related things. If you are seeking clock hours for today's training, please be sure that your name in PD or your name on Zoom matches what your name is in PD Enroller. So please be sure to use the little three dots up in the right-hand corner, hit rename so it shows the first and last name that you use in PD Enroller, and that is important for attendance down the line. Normal Zoom things, please mute yourself when you're not speaking, take bio breaks as needed. I recognize everyone who works in this space is busy, things come up. If you need to take a moment, take a call or support a student or a family, we get it. We just please ask that you make sure that you are muted and camera off if you have someone in the room with you. We've had some student surprise appearances, which we love, but also want to respect their privacy. There is a live transcript available if you need it. And we encourage you to use reaction buttons. I'm already seeing some reactions being used today. I love it. Give us those thumbs up, hearts, smiley faces, clapping hands, whatever. You can pick literally any emoji, and we love to get that interaction with you all. We're gonna ask that folks please raise your hand if you would like to come off mute, and that can happen. We'll kind of pause throughout for Q&As as well as kind of throughout the training if a question comes up. You can also pop it in the chat, and we will do our best to answer your questions as they arise. And if we do not have an answer at that moment, we will do our best to figure out who might have an answer for you. Remember, no such thing as a bad question. I am going to have Sammy drop the link to the SurveyMonkey real quick. This is for after the training, and we just want to be sure that you have it available to you. So if you open it up, leave it in your browser, minimize the browser. That way, if something happens and you don't have the link, you're not able to save the whole training today, you still have that link. If you're seeking clock hours, you will need to do the survey through PD Enroller instead. Little bit about who we are as Building Changes, and I apologize, I'm a little congested. There's a cold going around. Stay on top of your vitamin C, folks. Building Changes is a statewide nonprofit working alongside communities to explore the intersections of systems serving young people, students, and families experiencing homelessness. Some of our work involves funding innovative ideas, providing technical assistance and training, project and program research and evaluation, and advocacy efforts that aim to change policies to strengthen implementation. We've shared a lot of spaces with folks before. I recognize a lot of faces in the room, and there's also some new ones or names. So we're excited to have you. And then just want to make sure that we share that our work is centered in racial equity. Building Changes is committed to centering racial equity internally and externally. We bring a targeted universalism lens coined by John A. Powell to our work, which acknowledges equity rather than equality. We no longer believe that everyone should receive the same level of support, but believe in prioritizing the needs of those most marginalized. By doing so, there is universal benefit. So to be clear, this is not about preference. This is about acknowledging that people are situated differently and have varying needs. We wanted to include this infographic to really center what this means in Washington State. Sorry, I got the sun really coming in this morning, which is great. So in Washington State, per a 2019 study that we conducted, 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color. So just important to remember that when we're thinking about the 42,000 students in our state experiencing homelessness and the disproportionality. A little bit about who we are, how we got here. We are here through partnership with OSPI through ARP funds. They have contracted with us to deliver 7 trainings across 2 years, 4 different times each, 28 trainings total. Today is training number 20. Woo! Feeling excited and a little sunny, but we're very excited for this partnership and excited to see how our work can continue with OSPI. Our agenda today is going to be, we're going to finish up these intros, a little overview. We're going to go into a little bit about McKinney-Vento, and then really just like a sampling of different student support programs and how they intersect with McKinney-Vento. And then we have, I believe, 3 or 4 guest speakers joining us today. And time allowing at the end, we will go into breakout rooms or just have a big group discussion, depending on how many folks are here. There will be a break in the middle. These are the objectives as listed in PD Enroller and as referenced in our survey and what we were thinking about when creating this training. All right, so with that, oh, I'm scrolling in the wrong way. We want to really ground today's training, starting with this spoken word by Christian Page. Christian is a local advocate and artist in Tacoma, and we have had the pleasure of meeting with him, and we're excited to partner with him more in the future, but we really wanted to share this piece to center our work today. And I'm going to make sure I'm sharing my computer screen. So one moment while I do that. Zoom and I just not get along today. All right. Hopefully folks can hear this, and if not, please pop something in the chat letting me know, and I'll try and adjust.
They called us low income. They called us at risk. Always speaking from a deficit, didn't realize that my learned experience was prerequisite to be a leader in this community. How could you ever really know unity if you've never seen the broken? They tried to slam the door shut, but my man Tim held it open. See, they forgot to call us scholars. Forgot to call us knowledge dip sociologists, unapologists, polished with dreams of being our brother's keeper long before it was common in politics. See, we were the seeds that nobody expected to be trees, but we tend to supersede expectations, defy statistics. Never standing complicit, see, leaders aren't just in our titles, it's synonymous with our existence. We were the roses that grew from the concrete, became the garden that grew from the ghetto, became the forest that grew from the forgotten, proceeded without caution, never waited to blossom. See, this is the part of the story where somebody finally saw them. It started in a garage. Humble beginnings in its early stage where teachers who cared worked extended days without extended pay just to see their students walk across that prestigious stage and not holding regular diplomas. No, see, these were degrees for change. They gave us the tools, watered our seeds, never looked surprised at what their investment would bring. A network full of leaders from the Hill to the CD, educated and ready to meet the city's needs. We changed campuses, brought perspectives to private schools, navigated the unspoken rules of colleges that weren't built for us. With stories too unique for the common application, collected determination in a cadre and formation, we made an impact that could only be measured in scientific notation. We became teachers, preachers, scientists, activists, counselors, lawyers, employers, nonprofit founders, and PhDs. But ultimately, when watered, we became trees. A wise person plants seeds so the descendants with no shade. The investment that was made receives returns every day. What started as little ripples has now become waves, and generational trajectories have been completely changed. Now this is community development. And it doesn't start with tall buildings, renovations, or detaining our youth. It starts with homegrown leaders unafraid to speak their truth, able to bear fruit because they're connected with deep roots to a city that raised them and respects what they do. When a community stands together, the mountains become movable. Lights in the collective are too bright to be dimmed. We didn't love our communities because they were beautiful. Our communities are beautiful because we love them. So don't call us anything that starts with a deficit. Call us scholars, call us leaders, call us change, call us trees, and discover what happens when you decide to water a seed. Call us the future, and watch us as we continue to bear fruit. And what they told us was the desert.
I'm gonna take a moment to sit in the power that was spoken to us by Christian Page just then. You can check out his website, got some incredible work that he's been doing. We're also super excited to partner with him on May 19th. We are hosting a school housing community partnerships convening. It's going to be down in Renton. Samuel will drop a link to more information about that. It's open to anyone who serves students and families experiencing homelessness. And we are excited to have Christian join us to share some of his wisdom and power with us. And I need to share my screen again. All right. Oh. Hold on. Zoom is just not my friend today. This is impressive. All right. All right, we are back. You are seeing my screen, but you will not be hearing my computer sound because I don't want any emails to pop up and you think it's one of yours. All right. Well, all right, and with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sammy.
All right. We've done this training 3 times, but that video gets me every time. So the information you have in the chat is both kind of citing just Christian Page's work, as well as him being named the Poet Laureate for Tacoma. So that's a new title he's holding. Really powerful human being. Okay, moving on. What we'd love to ground in today is really going to be McKinney-Vento, as you all may have guessed. So if you've attended previous trainings, this slide may be familiar, so just want to be open and honest about that. Apologies if this feels, very review content, but we always just like to make sure we're kind of beginning these with foundational McKinney-Vento elements at play. So what is McKinney-Vento? We know that the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is a federal law that ensures immediate enrollment and educational stability for homeless children and youth. We know that the program is designed to really address barriers that homeless children and youth may face in enrolling, attending, and succeeding in school. So that's going to be what you're reading in the green box on this slide, but to the right is kind of what the realities of McKinney-Vento are. We know that even though it says in law what McKinney-Vento is tasked to do, that isn't always easy in terms of how it plays out in your local district. So McKinney-Vento is really well known to be one of the most underfunded mandates across the state for us. The programs are really built to meet the needs of their students, but that really looks different in every community. What we know about the work is that it's super dynamic, it's unpredictable, and it really requires a really wide range of skills. We know in that kind of community sense, we've all heard in social work at some point in our lives, we know it takes a village. This specific student population comes with very unique challenges, and McKinney-Vento is really in place to help support those students. We also know, and this can come up a million times through this training perhaps, but we know that staffing does not always match the need for McKinney-Vento. So even though we do dictate a liaison in Washington State in every school district, it does not always mean that they will have the capacity to identify every student or every household that may be struggling. This is why we love to highlight today different advocates in your districts and in your communities that you may be able to lean on or go to. So we're gonna we shared a couple different links on kind of more McKinney-Vento resources if that's feeling like something you'd like more of. And now we're just going to get into a little bit around eligibility. So as mentioned, that McKinney-Vento liaison is going to be in your district or in your community at some point. There is a list that we will drop, I believe. SPI hosts a website that will show who your liaison is that's updated annually, just in case you're like, I haven't worked with them, or maybe they changed roles. Should be up to date and has contact information, email, and phone number. So really that person is tasked with understanding at a district level who's eligible. Also in Washington, not to get too into the weeds, but we have McKinney-Vento building points of contact, which means there should be someone in each school building that is aware or helping identify those eligible students. So the ACT, as it is in definition, is for students that are experiencing homelessness are individuals who are lacking a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence. So if you're seeing on the screen, we have this kind of broken out into those three parts. So what we really hope that you can think about when you leave today, connected to McKinney-Vento, is just how can you help play a role in identifying and supporting families in these situations, whether that means they've already been identified and you can bring in some additional support services, whether that means connecting them to your local liaison. These are all kind of parts of the role you can play in helping those students and families get to the resources they need. So this is just really going to break those three pieces down further. But think about, is this place that this student's staying at, is it fixed or permanent? It's not going to change anytime soon. Is it regular or predictable? So if this student's getting out of school early, they know they can go there for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month. It feels like it's a place they can be on a consistent basis. Adequate, sufficient for meeting both physical and psychological needs. So is it safe? Is it a place that the student feels comfortable being? As you can see, these pieces can open up a lot of gray area. So we always say just really rely heavily on case-by-case basis. Listen to your students, listen to your families, and provide support from there. Moving on to the next slide. So connecting students and families to homeless support services. I'm going to drop another link that I found that I wanted to share. Hopefully we haven't dropped it already. But, I, again, just wanted, if you're curious about kind of what that liaison role looks like, that's going to be a great read. But this is kind of the basics on how McKinney-Vento is accessed through your school district. It might look a little bit different for every district, but really a family will be able to fill out, or a student, if it's unaccompanied youth or a young person, they're able to fill out a student housing questionnaire at their school or district office. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it can be accessed by phone. So there's different ways to get to that. And that's really kind of where the identification begins. From there, McKinney-Vento staff will conduct some sort of intake assessment to gather information on what the needs are. And then that identification, enrollment, and transportation will come through based on that particular student's situation. So this is happening usually on an annual basis. It has to be by law happening on an annual basis. Some districts try to identify, send home housing questionnaires to every student in the district twice a year. That's more seen as a best practice. But another thing to remember is that even though everyone has a liaison in their district, that role may not be a full-time person. It might not be a one single person focused solely on McKinney-Vento needs. It may be tacked on to a different role. So you may be a secretary, or you may be a counselor or a social worker, and you have a 0.2 FTE. That means that's part of your job. So just kind of keeping in mind around what that capacity could look like, while also knowing this is kind of how we make sure those students are connected to supports in our district. And then this next slide is going to just give a visual of kind of where some pieces we hope to touch on today, as well as just representation of the different school-based programs that are important to partner with when serving McKinney-Vento students. So really think about like the crosswalk between them. We've had some really cool ideas come up, both in listening and working with districts across Washington, convening advisory committees on cross-program, like with cross-program focus, such as McKinney-Vento, SPED, ELL, attendance truancy, and Head Start. So really kind of bringing folks together to get that range of experience, and meeting with that committee regularly. Really helps to approach the student in a holistic way and really understand kind of all the different needs that may be happening in that particular household's life. We're going to kind of break some of these down a little further moving forward, and I am going to pass this off to my colleague, Kayla.
Thanks, Sammy. So the first one we'll go over is Head Start, or Early Head Start, which is available for students experiencing homelessness, and they are actually prioritized in enrollment. Which means that they would kind of skip the line for a wait list. And I found that oftentimes a big part of being an advocate for students and families and with working with them is knowing their rights, because a lot of folks who, you might be talking to someone in Head Start and they don't know that they're supposed to prioritize students experiencing homelessness on their wait lists and things like that. So, this is backed up by Washington state law to kind of educate them and share the information that even if the local Head Start programs are full, once they are indicated as a family experiencing homelessness, they may go to the top of wait list, and there are some reserved spots for students experiencing homelessness and students in foster care. The next one that we'll go over is CTE, which is Career and Technical Education programs. And this is really similar in that students that are experiencing homelessness can oftentimes either skip the wait list, or if there's like a specific registration deadlines that they miss, those can be waived so that they can fully participate in CTE credits. And I found that these are especially useful for unaccompanied youth. I was just meeting with a former student of mine who's now a junior in high school and said, like the traditional 4-year path as an unaccompanied young person is, as far as college goes, is really unattainable if you don't have like a parent or guardian there to take you to Target and set up your dorm and do all those things. And so she was just sharing that she's really enjoying the CTE program and credits, because they are a direct career path where she can, immediately make money and support herself. And so career and technical education programs are a great option for high school age students. and again, to just kind of educate the folks in charge of those programs at your districts about ensuring that fees and fines and deadlines are waived to increase access for students experiencing homelessness. And let's see, the next one is about English language learners. So oftentimes in these trainings, we have questions about citizenship and how that impacts McKinney-Vento eligibility. And every time we say it doesn't, you don't have to ask anything about citizenship or documentation. Anyone who is unstably housed is eligible for McKinney-Vento services. And as far as ELL programs, along with immediate enrollment in school, then they are students are also to receive specialized education services and be enrolled in ELL programs right away, regardless of any documentation normally required for enrollment. And the next slide just goes a little bit deeper into migrant and immigrant families experiencing homelessness. We had a lot of questions last year when we had a big influx of immigrants and refugees from Ukraine and other places. And so to just be really clear that they are eligible for McKinney-Vento services if they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Even if they are, being set up in like a hotel or motel by a relocation settlement department or through a nonprofit. If they're unstably housed, then they are eligible for all of the services that McKinney-Vento offers.
We also want to take this moment to highlight the International Rescue Committee. We know a lot of communities in Washington have seen an influx of refugee families from different parts of the world, and they have been a key resettlement agency. They cover kind of the Seattle, Puget Sound region, as well as over in Spokane. They have an office, and I believe they are kind of doing some work across the state as well. But they have been a great resource to connect with. They also have an education team that are really focusing on that intersection of the school piece with the newcomer families. All right. We are just rolling through. I do want to take a moment. We just kind of, I'm going to go back this slide. We did just kind of, like I said, give you a tasting of a lot of things. And I know that we have some experts in the room as well. We want to own that we have worked at the intersection of a lot of these programs, but that doesn't mean we have worked explicitly for these programs that we're highlighting. So just want to give a moment if there's anything that anyone in the room would like to add or questions that you have. I'll take a pause for that. All right, I'm not seeing any quick raise the hand buttons. Oh no. Sammy and Kayla, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. It might be worth just closing the meeting and re-entering. Well, I guess they can't hear. Oh, okay, I can hear.
Zoom, I'm telling you, it is out to get us today. It is just like, maybe not. So thanks for bearing with us. Glad you can hear me again. All right, so I didn't see anyone quickly racing to the chat box to share anything else or ask any questions. So we're going to continue moving forward. Oh, Maria.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find the button.
Okay.
So as a teacher, what is my requirement? It is a form that I have to fill it up to, and who I need to turn this in.
So if you have a student that you believe may be experiencing homelessness and could qualify for McKinney-Vento, that's when you want to figure out who your district liaison is or your building point of contact. So there's going to be a building point of contact in every school building. And you could ask your principal who that is, because they're the ones who have to designate that person. You can also use the contact list link that I think Sammy or Kayla dropped in the chat to figure out who your district liaison is. And then once you kind of connect with them, then they can help kind of do that intake form and they can take the rest of the process. You as a classroom teacher don't have to do that intake form. It's just really helpful if you can do that connecting and reference point. to the McKinney-Vento liaison or building point of contact.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, so now we are going to go into a little bit on special education. We do have some guest speakers who will be joining us in about 10 minutes. So we might be a little ahead of schedule, I'm realizing, for them to join. So we'll just roll with it. I do also recognize that we have some other experts in the room on this topic. So again, I'm going to own, I am not the expert in special education. So if there's anything that anyone would like to add as we are sharing, please feel free to do so. So really just highlighting that an important piece of McKinney-Vento is that students, they may be changing schools. It is a part of the process that they can stay in their school of origin and get transportation covered if they are, you know, slightly out of district or at different pieces. They can stay at that school of origin, but sometimes we know that that isn't possible. Students do change schools, and it is important that if McKinney-Vento liaisons are communicating, or anyone in your district is, and you know that the student has an IEP, a 504 plan, or different special education needs, that those can follow the student to their new school, right? So that is an important piece of McKinney-Vento. We did drop a brief in the chat from NCHE about a crosswalk between the IDEA Act and McKinney-Vento. That can be really helpful to understand kind of the nuance between the two. So this is pieces in here that I really just want to highlight without reading all of the pieces here, is just reiterating special education is provided at no cost to parents. It includes related services student needs to access their educational program. And just because the student's McKinney-Vento doesn't mean that they don't qualify for special education. So we want to make sure they're still accessing that school resource. And this is really where that liaison and building point of contact can really come in as advocates for the student to connect with the special education team. So this could be something like including the liaison or building point of contact in IEP meetings or similar MTSS or meetings that are occurring to ensure that the needs of the student are being met with the understanding and the lens of the other challenges they may be facing with their housing instability. So it's, yeah, I think that's what I want to highlight on this one. I do have the slides a little later kind of that talk a little bit more through IEP versus 504, because we know that that can be kind of confusing, as well as yeah, something that we all are supporting. So next slide, Joey. Okay, so so the section 504 is it's from the Rehabilitation Act 504 plan, and it's developed to ensure that a child who has a disability identified under the law and is attending an elementary or secondary educational institution receives accommodations that will ensure the academic success and access to the learning environment. So thinking about the differences between IEP and 504, not all students who have disabilities require specialized instruction. For those that do require specialized instruction, that's where the IEP is developed and comes in. But for those who just need accommodations, that's where the 504 plan comes in. And again, this is where we really want to highlight the role of McKinney-Vento and liaisons and connecting with your building points of contact to ensure that if you have a student who is identified as McKinney-Vento, that they are still accessing these resources. And I did see one of our guest speakers pop in, so that's great. And here is kind of that walkthrough again, just a quick tip sheet thinking through what is the difference between an IEP and a 504. So IEP is like specific to one of 13 specified disabilities within the IDEA Act, whereas 504 can be for any challenge that a student may be facing that impacts their success in school. So again, that individualized plan versus accommodation. The IEP is very much, it's a specialized IEP team, where 504 can be created by a broader category of school staff. So this is, in thinking about that accommodation piece for 504, is really bringing in the McKinney-Vento liaison if you know a student is identified as such. And then, yeah, you can see this. We've got a bunch of different resources on this page as well that show kind of dive a little deeper into the difference between the two. And then wanted to highlight another resource. The ARC is a nationwide organization supporting folks with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And they have chapters across Washington state. And we'll share links later so you can figure out who yours may be if you want to connect with them. They've got some great resources, as well as they shared with us a quick reference sheet about supporting youth with developmental disabilities who are experiencing homelessness. Does a 504 need to be a health challenge diagnosed by a doctor? I am not 100% sure, so I'm going to hold that question, and I'm going to introduce our next guest speakers / open it up to, I see Sammy nodding her head.
I was definitely nodding my head to Joey, opening it up
Oh,
to
beautiful.
others. So let me just say, I'm not about to come in that way, but we do luckily have few folks that may have some expertise in that area. We can hold that question maybe till we get some intros going. I think that could make sense. So just quick timeout. We'll get back to you, Rachel. We definitely want to hear the answer.
And again, this is why we're giving you a sampling and then bringing experts in to go a little deeper. So this is very exciting. We are going to welcome in Eric and Tracy, who are both school psychologists down in Tacoma. So welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
I
can answer that question real quickly
Yeah, thank you.
about 504s. So it just has to be a perceived diagnosis. Doesn't have to be an official medical diagnosis.
Awesome.
If that's what the question was, yeah.
Yeah, that is it. Thank you.
Okay.
So with that, feel free again, guests or participants, continue to add questions into the chat. We're going to have Tracy and Eric share some information. They've provided a few slides for us today. And then we can go into a kind of a question and answer dialogue as things arise after they share their knowledge with us. So before we kind of dive in, I would love Tracy and Eric, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself, share a little bit about who you are and how you come into this work. Then we will get rolling into your content. Okay,
I'll go ahead and start. So I've been a school psychologist. This is my 14th year. Before I did this, I actually owned a restaurant with my dad in Moscow, Idaho for 14 years too. And I had a degree in psychology from 1992. And then after I decided to close the restaurant, I decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna actually use my degree. And I thought I was gonna be a school counselor at first, but then some of the testing classes that we took in the counseling program, I really just became very interested in the school psychology program, and I love my profession. So it's been a good. This is my 7th district. Tacoma's the best.
I guess it's my turn, huh?
Uh-huh.
I'm Tracy. Nice to meet you all. This is my 28th year being a school psychologist. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I started off working in the world of mental health with mentally ill older adults, and decided, you know, maybe if someone would have gotten to my clients sooner, they would have had a better quality of life. So I started learning about a school psychology program and went back to school at that time. And I've been a school psych ever since in the state of Washington. And I was in Bethel for about 15 years and now in Tacoma. And Eric and I actually met doing some work with the Washington State Association of School Psychologists. And then we got married a few years ago.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm glad that you all have each other and are so excited for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to just go into your slides, and if at any point questions arise or I have another follow-up question, I'll just pop in.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we only caught the tail end of the last presentation where they're talking about IEPs and 504 plans and McKinney-Vento. So this might be a little bit redundant in some places, but this will just come from our perspective of things.
I think that's awesome, and I'm sure you will share even more with better detail than I was able to.
I don't know about that, but we'll do what we can. And so the first part is just talking about being knowledgeable about McKinney-Vento. With students that are kids that are in special education, it's so important that they maintain the school that they're in. So if they do happen to move out, which happens a lot of times, of course, the students that are either homeless or in foster care. And so unless they move too far away, but we had a student coming in all the way from Seattle last year to the school I work with in Tacoma, and this kiddo had so many good connections with the other students and with the teachers. She did that for just over 6 months before they decided to go just to Seattle after that. But it is really important to maintain that relationship with everybody. I think. Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I think, yeah, definitely. We want to maintain those connections and make sure kids are receiving the services that they need. A lot of our kids, our homeless population, foster care students, they might already be in special education. And if they are, we want to make sure that the services that they have currently on their IEP meet the needs that they have at the time. Sometimes that might mean, if they don't, we meet a lot oftentimes for these students, just to make sure that we're doing everything that we need. Sometimes we might need to do reevaluations to assess their needs to where they are right now. And so we're always open to doing that. Sometimes kids come to us and they're not in special education. So, we meet a lot to determine whether or not they might need special education. And so we're gathering a lot of information to consider whether or not they need a special education evaluation. Some kids might just need, and I don't know how much you talked about this before we came on. Some kids might need a 504 accommodation plan and maybe not special education. So we really talk about all of those things. And some kids might need some general education intervention. So it's really trying to differentiate what is best for the student.
And so in making that determination, it's a whole team process, and especially with kiddos that are homeless, there's like WISE teams. There's so many other people that are involved, and so it's a really close look to determine what each individual student will be most beneficial for them. And some kiddos are doing so well, we don't want to take them out of the general education classes. So it's not special education or a 504 plan is not necessarily the best in the best interest of the student. But nevertheless, we do pay close attention to the students in general education, special education across the board. I think.
Are there any questions about that? Or about that referral process or anything?
I would like to clarify the process for 504. If I just noticed, like, I'm gonna get one of the students this school year, it's the speech really noticeable, but also even that I work like little interventions, like 15 minutes every morning with two of them, but one is that really worries me because we are third grade and he is like kinder level. So we try to just do the intentional intervention with him. And I will say after the third, fourth day that I work in one little subject, like simple with him. On the fourth day, he will show me that, okay, it's like, oh, he's kind of getting it. But then Friday passed, we practiced a little bit, but the Monday when he came back, it's gone. And for parents, it's during the conference, we try to just highlight that like one step and that he kind of showed the learning, but then he forgot about it. And parents kind of hard because especially dad is like, my son is not a sweat. It's like, no,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that. I said that he needs more support, like 15 minutes one-on-one is not enough because we have 25 students in the class. So I can't, even I'd love to just do something special for him. It's hard to find the time. So what can I do to help him out, to speed up or just start the process? What
Mhm.
can I do for him to have a 504 next year, we'll say, because he didn't, like, nobody did nothing for him in kinder, first and second grade.
Oh my
And-
goodness.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I think I was just gonna ask, has the whole team met for him to talk about, like, everyone together with the school psychologist, counselor?
We have a meeting like 3 months ago,
Okay.
because we were trying to do best, trying to notice, and the gap is big on two of them, but for him is that worries me that he's like, he can retain. So they said there has to be a process, has to be the form, the parents needs to agree. So that's the hard part came in, because they had refused. Like, obviously he told me that he's not the kid is like, no, I'm not saying that. It's just like, we all learn different
Mhm.
angles, and he obviously we need to find his angle for him to learn more. And then we have a meeting with counselor and the admin, but this kiddo doesn't qualify straight to it. That's what I get, because it's been more than 8 weeks, and they always says, like, parents need to agree first and then attendance. He's coming late, or he just don't go to school. So what I'm trying on my side is just, if he doesn't
Yes.
come during the first one day in the week, I will call in the afternoon. Hey, I just miss him. Like, I just checking how they doing. So I call home.
Yeah, you're doing everything right.
Mhm. Yeah.
You sound like you're a really good advocate for this student.
I-
It can be tricky when parents, they have their own, you know, whatever experiences they've had, some of them in special education, or, they come in, they often, arrive at their child's school with those experiences, and it can be difficult. And, as a school psychologist, I try to meet parents where they are and try to just give them more information about the process, trying to help them along. Hopefully it sounds like that kiddo may need a special ed evaluation,
Mhm.
but the team is definitely correct. If we don't have the parents on board, you can't proceed. So it's really, how can we explain the process to the parents so that they're understanding? And I've had to do that with a lot of parents over the years. Eric, you probably have too.
I would agree with that. I couldn't say it better myself. So Tracy summed it up pretty good.
All right, looks like we have another question. I do want to pause. So we've got about 7 minutes left before we need to
Okay.
move into a break. So Tracy and Eric, up to you if you want to move on to your next slide or answer this question now. I'll let you.
What was the question about?
I'm not sure. We've got a hand up.
Oh,
I'll just make it really quick. I just need some guidance actually. So there's 4 children, their siblings. They are not homeless. Their mother is actively using, and they miss school more often than not. They've been put on the Becca bill. But because they are not homeless, they can't utilize the McKinney-Vento services. What other I always try to brainstorm what other avenues can be, because the moms, they live right across the street from the school, which is the
Oh.
crazy part, literally 500 feet. The mom is not getting up to walk them to school or to the light to watch them walk across the street so that they can run to the school. And now they're about to suffer more consequences because they're not in school. So the mother's about to have to go to court and all this other jazzy stuff that they like to do to marginalize people. But what would be another avenue that the school can work with the family to get them to school on time? Because the kids want to go. It's not that they don't want to go. The children do want to go, but the mother is a big barrier.
Yeah, that's really frustrating when that happens. Typically with students like that, we have a really good social worker and counseling team at our school that tries to handle those, plus administrators. So usually that team gets really involved and tries to support the family, especially the students, and doing whatever they can to get them to school on a consistent basis. But I hear you, that's really frustrating.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, and it seems like, I mean, with the kid being right across the street, it seems like the school could probably get creative, like if
Yeah.
the
That's what I
parent
was
was
thinking.
willing, like,
Mhm.
I bet
Maybe
you
have a
they're,
crosswalk, let the
Yes.
crosswalk
Yeah.
person wait at the light for them. But they haven't done anything like that. So they're BIPOC, and the school is predominantly Caucasian. Like
Mhm.
there's only 5 Black kids in that whole school,
Wow.
the entire school, and only 1 Black worker, and he's the janitor.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So nothing's moved. That's why I was like, maybe this is not the time or the place, or maybe this is the perfect time or the perfect place to
Well,
ask.
I'd probably just ask them, can we
Me
get
too.
creative, think outside the box here? Maybe it's not something you usually do, but since they're so close to the school, is someone willing to go, watch the kids cross the street in the morning? I mean, it's worth an ask,
I agree.
because you probably at this point, it's hard to, when they're missing school like that, how can you even tell where their skills are at? And what's, to determine what services they might need, what help they might need.
Yeah, Jamie, this is such an important question, and we are going to have some time in breakout rooms later at the end of the training, and either breakout rooms or just big group discussion. We'll see, to decide to have a conversation, and we can dive into that a little deeper. Maybe crowdsource some more ideas for you as well. I'm seeing Maria popping in. What about a home visitor? So I think we've got some ideas, and I would love for us to kind of come back to that with you when we go into that discussion / breakout rooms later.
Yes, absolutely. We just, the social worker, we just were able to hire just this year, and he's able to do those home visits. Previously it was the principals, but they didn't always have that time. So right now we have a really high need school. Tracy works in a really high need school too. And it's just feel really fortunate. We have staff members that can help out to support that and do those visits. Is so important. This next part just goes directly into what we're talking about, communicating with staff so they understand the needs of the student. And that we've been talking about this last slide too. It's just really important to get all the teams together, especially when you have advocates, try to get the parents involved. We really want all the gen ed teachers involved, just so everyone understands what's going on and can do as much as we can to support the family. Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, well, I think you said it, really just wrapping around these students, accessing all the services that we can. So those community services as well, and bringing them in, making sure whatever the student needs and that we're able to help hook them into, that's what we want to do. So we can keep them engaged, give them what we want school to continue to be a safe place for them, a place they want to be. And so making sure that we can give them what they need while they're at school is our goal.
Yeah, and again, just lots of team meetings, as much as you can. And so these are the takeaways. I know Sammy asked us to put up 3 takeaways, and do you want to go over those, Tracy?
You can keep going if you want. I can jump in.
All right. So removing barriers, and we've talked about this through the 15 minutes we've been talking to y'all, and then addressing needs of the whole child, just thinking of everything socially, academically. One of the things I get frustrated with sometimes is that some schools or psychologists are reluctant to proceed with an evaluation based on attendance, but there's a lot of things that could be playing into that, especially mental illness, and that's why they're not attending. And I know that we were just talking too about might be more of a parent thing too, but really just diving into everything and considering everything too before you make that decision whether or not to evaluate.
Yeah, I'm glad
And-
you mentioned that, Eric,
You are?
not to cut you off. Yeah, about, I frequently have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation with interns or school psychs that I'm mentoring because they want to use that attendance piece as an automatic no to
Right.
an evaluation. And sometimes, in some cases, it is kind of cut and dry, but in so many cases, especially it just seems more these days, that those attendance issues could be part of an underlying disability and what is preventing them from getting to school. So just being open to looking at all of the pieces so you can make the best decisions for a student.
Yep. I agree. And then again, that consistent collaboration between everybody is so important. A lot of people come to us. We don't really have to worry about it, especially WISE teams. They want to talk to us frequently.
Mhm.
So it's at least at our schools, Tracy and I, the school that we work at 2 middle schools, and there's lots of people that reach out to us. We have a really good district liaison for foster families, especially, and lots of strong advocates out there. So it's as long as we are able to communicate well. Sometimes the advocates aren't as always positive as others, and but we do whatever we can to meet the needs of the families.
Yep. And we consistently, try to advocate for good communication,
Yep.
just even within our teams and buildings, because sometimes it can feel fragmented. So that's just kind of a battle that we're constantly, like sometimes if we're left out of the conversation on things, that's just something that we're often some schools are better than others. We'll just put it that way. But we're
Definitely.
constantly reminding folks that let's all be talking about these things together and collaborating.
Well, I just want to give a huge thank you, Tracy and Eric, for joining us today. I know you actually came to us at a slightly last minute, and you are just incredible, and we're so lucky to have had you share your expertise with us today. I invite you to hang out for as long as you want. We will go to breakout rooms at the end, like if you are available and want to join in those, please
Okay.
do. Otherwise, we're just glad to have you. We are going to go into a really quick break. We have our next speaker here, so I want to make sure to give folks a quick bio break as we need it. I'm going to say it's a 3-minute break. I know that feels super short, but I've got a lot of great stuff that we want to get to today. So quick 3-minute break. We're going to come back at 11:05, and then we're going to jump in with Boo. And I'm going to stop highlighting you guys. Sorry about that.
That's fine. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, I will see you at 11:05, and we're going to get rolling. Going to pause the recording for these 2 minutes.
You're seeing an odd, I know you're seeing an odd view. Joey just shared that you kind of see my presentation mode instead of the official mode, and I can't see it. So I just said this is a good thing because it gives everybody a little glimpse of what teachers went through during the pandemic, and some of us even now. So I'm a teacher, I'm a classroom teacher, and I teach a class called Shakachib. I work for Seattle Public Schools. I'm going to try to go to my next slide so you can see it. I work for the Native Education Department for Seattle Public Schools, and I was recruited to work in Seattle 28 years ago. I'm in my 28th year, and we started Shakachib about 8 years ago. Just a little bit about me if you are into these kind of things. I went to the University of Washington. I was a varsity athlete on the women's crew team. I got my master's in teaching from Seattle Pacific. I was also the 2022 Puget Sound Teacher of the Year and the 2021 Native Action Network Enduring Spirit Award for a lifetime commitment to Native people. Those things don't really impress me, if I'm quite honest. How that came to be is I got a phone call at home from my principal at the time, and she said, "Oh, congratulations, you've been nominated for Teacher of the Year." And I said, "Oh, that's so dumb." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not going to follow through with that. That's silly." And no disrespect to any pageant people, but it just felt like a popularity contest. And I'm not into that kind of thing. And she said, "Oh, I see how it is." And I said, "What?" And she said, "You've been pushing your Native students forward for years. And now that somebody is pushing you, you're not going to do it." And she put me in my place really quickly. And I was like, "Ah, crap, now I have to do it." And went through the process and was selected to be the regional teacher. The thing that has done for me, or I guess it reminded me, is that sometimes those titles carry more weight for people. And when I think about our students, they don't come with those fancy titles, they don't come with those fancy families or all the other things that those of us who consider ourselves privileged get to bring with us. So it's a good reminder that I'm not doing anything different now than I did 28 years ago. It's just that somebody pushed me and somebody saw me. And it's just a reminder for us that have the privilege to work with youth that hopefully we can be that person for our kids. We can be the person that sees them and pushes them because they're already fabulous. We just need to remind them. See if I can get another slide here. So this is a little bit about my classroom. This classroom was an idea born out of Superintendent Nyland at the time and Native Ed Manager Gil Morris. What is different about this class is I am funded out of district baseline. I am super excited to work for a city that said we see this need and they found the money. Too often, I believe, we say, "Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that." And from my perspective, unless agencies are willing to put funding behind it, it's just pretty talk. And we can say all the right things, but if we're not going to find a way to do it with money, resources, and time, it's just fancy talk. And my personality and my history being an educator, I don't have time or the energy for fancy talk because the need is too great for our youth. I partner with 2 schools. It was based on Native Ed student enrollment count. Chiefs Health International High School, which is in West Seattle, and Denny, which is on the same campus, have the highest number of Native learners in our city. And so that's how I was placed here. Interestingly, for all of you that are maybe aware of Seattle, our second highest school is Ballard, which is funny because when I think of Ballard, I don't think Native learners, but that's number 2. The other thing that I think has made this program very successful is my manager, my supervisor is not my principal. And I think it's possible to advocate more powerfully, I'll choose that word, if you're not going to be evaluated by the person that you are advocating with, if that makes sense. Like I can go to a principal and say, "Hey, this isn't working," and not have to worry that it's going to come back on me. So when we advocate for families, when we advocate for students, I always, of course, want to do that in partnership, but I don't want to have to advocate and fight and do that with the person who's also responsible for my evaluation. Little bit of history about the name. Shakachib is, and you can't see me, hopefully you're seeing my slideshow, but Shakachib, if you translate it, it is a Southern Lushootseed word. Southern Lushootseed is the language for the Duwamish and Coast Salish people from the area where my school is located. It literally translates into raising of hands. And because this had never been done before, I used those raised to guide my work. So everything that I do, everything that my assistant does is to lift students up. And if we get invited to be on, equity committees or diversity committees or come be part of the building team leadership or all these different things, but I have found for me, if I keep that laser focus on lifting kids up, if it doesn't lift up my kids, I'm not interested. It doesn't mean I don't care about those other things, but I got to keep my focus. And I think for those of us who work with youth, we are going to get pulled in so many different directions. And they are all important directions. The work is vast. But I think what causes us to be able to sustain ourselves or empowers us to sustain ourselves is a laser focus. When I'm working with my youth, I assume two things. Number one, you're strong, and number two, you're intelligent. And they look at me kind of sideways. If you guys work with youth, I know you know that look. They kind of look at you like, yeah, right, whatever, crazy lady. But I believe it, because you don't survive genocide without those two things. And if we are looking at other groups of students, I work with many homeless kids. I have a trans son, all the different marginalized groups, right? When we look at all these groups of people, you don't survive those things unless you are strong and unless you are intelligent. It's an easy thing to point out for my Native students as a Native woman, because we're not even supposed to be here, but we are. And so I think that applies to all different kinds of groups of people. And then the second things are, we are the prayers of our ancestors. Your ancestors survived for you to be here. And I said it to a couple kids this morning. They were like, oh, this is good enough. I was like, no, your ancestors didn't go through what they went through so you could be good enough. We're not doing half-ass here. And then the second thing, or the last thing, is my expectations are high, but my support is higher. Very often when we are working with kids that are struggling, I have seen people want to do shortcuts. I don't believe in shortcuts. I believe in more support, because our kids are capable and they're strong, and they can do strong things. They can do hard things. You guys know this because you are right there with them, but it just means we have to increase the support, not lower the expectations. And I know you guys know that. My role, as I mentioned, is advocacy. The other part is making the invisible visible. When I was reached out to again and asked to come talk to you, I was hesitant. I've been out on bereavement leave, and I didn't know if I had the capacity. But I'm reminded constantly as a Native woman that anytime I can talk about Native kids and talk about Native people, I'm going to do that, because I feel like we are invisible. It's not even that we're not here. We just aren't even thought about, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I think very often that same thought goes to, again, think about the kids that you're serving. Are they invisible? How are we as educators, as case managers, as just advocates for youth, how are we lifting them up and making them visible? For me, I'm a Native woman. I'm working in Native education with Native kids. I'm so fortunate that I am working in the community that I'm the most passionate about. But I think it's nice to take pause and think, what am I doing for kids? How can I make them visible? Because once we know somebody, once we see somebody, it's a lot harder to ignore them. The other thing I do is I attend all IEPs, MDTs. I partner with teachers and then offer encouragement. I think anytime that as advocates for youth, we can be part of those difficult conversations, I think it's really impactful. And I don't know all the work that you all do, but even going through like the special ed identification process with my own child, with somebody who has done this work forever, it's still real goofy to walk into a room and there's 7 educators sitting on around the table, and then in you walk. It can be like, whoa, what the hell? And it can be very alienating. So anyways, to make not only our kids visible, but make that process one based in collaboration and celebrating the brilliance that is youth, I think is really important. The things that I also do in my room are just create space. One of the things we've taught students throughout time to do, by choice or not, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? And I have learned to hate the question. It is all about produce, produce, produce. What are we going to do? What are we going to create? And so what the pandemic did remind me and taught me in a new way is, sometimes it's just okay to be. And we don't do that as humans, but especially as traumatized kids and communities. Sometimes we don't do anything. Sometimes we just are. I had a senior come in last year. What are we going to do today? And I was so irritated. I was just having one of those days. And I said, today we're going to go over there and sit by that plant. And I have plants in my classroom. He goes, what? And I said, go sit by that plant. The plant wants to talk to you. Because I'm not going to lie, I wanted him out of my face. And he sat there for a few minutes. and he was really quiet, and I watched him, and I watched his shoulders drop. I watched his body change, and he walked over to my desk and he said, "Her name's Penelope." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "The plant. Her name's Penelope." And I said, "Oh, what did she teach you today?" And he said, "She taught me it's okay if I sit here and just hang out with Penelope." And for the rest of the year, this crazy senior, he's not crazy, he's a great kid, this young man would come into my room and talk to my plants. And it's a silly analogy, maybe, or maybe it's brilliant. You get to decide. But what it did is it just allowed him to be for a minute. And I could tell you that young man's story. I won't because it's his, but it was a tough story. And having a place just to come in and sit for a second was super impactful. So sometimes I think we need to step back from doing and step into being. The other things that we work on is food. I'm constantly trying to access food for my kids. It's hard to learn if your belly's rumbling. I mean, I get grumpy if I don't eat. I'm sure y'all do too. We work on housing stability, college applications, letters of recommendations, warm beds, and then limiting what I call TP. I call it trauma porn. And I apologize if that phrase offends anybody, but I think so many of our students go through so many horrific and amazing things, and they are mind-boggling, and they are hard to wrap our heads around. But we have to remember it's not our story. And I think our lives are our stories, and I think stories are sacred. And so we have to be careful about, just putting it out there for the world. It has taken years at my site if I go to a colleague and say, "Please excuse, Hector today." And when I first started, they would say, "Well, why?" But now they don't, because I've never told them, and I say this in love, it's none of their business. If a child has shared with me, then if I'm advocating for them, that's enough. And for all of us who work with kids, they love it because then they realize that they're safe with us. And then, of course, the last thing is teaching. And then honoring story. Every year, my classroom picks a topic. Sometimes I create it, sometimes they pick it, and we write a chat book. And it's a way to put out their brilliance and their wisdom. This year, I asked one of my seniors to come up with an add-on question, and I'll show you how we do this every day. And then I'll tell you how that comes into a book. I want to check in with my kids every single day, and I'm fortunate that I'm not bound by a set curriculum. I can kind of do what I want. This, how are we doing? The fingers to fist comes originally from the Marines, and the fist is on the bottom, but we indigenized it. We took this picture of this elder. This piece of art was produced out of the protests at Standing Rock. And what I love about this poster is lots of things, but you can't tell if it's a man, you can't tell if it's a woman, but you do know that this person has some age, but this person does not look fragile to me. This is a strong person. And if you look at the tilt of that person's jaw, that person is a fighter. And so we changed the fingers, or the fist to fingers, and we put the fist on the top. And when you check in with kids, you don't have to use this one. I encourage people to use it from your own communities and develop a way for kids to check in that's easy. And what this does for me every day is, well, number one, it's selfish. It creates community, but it's also selfish because then I know who I need to circle back around to check in with during the day. And I love the idea that the fist is to fight for what's right. Too often my students, fist is like in your face, like you're gonna go toe up. And so we use this to check in with the kids. And then I have an add-on question sometimes. This year, one of my seniors did an add-in question, and it was, what do you value the most in the world and why? And that became the question for our book that we're going to be publishing in the next couple of weeks. And the thing is, when they're with me, I don't care about their spelling. I don't care about punctuation because I'm no longer an LA teacher. And once I told them, I don't care if you know how to spell that. I can use spell check. I don't care if you know how to punctuate. I know how to do that. It became so freeing. I was an LA teacher for years. This isn't an LA class. And so the objectives become different, and it allows them to actually share their voice. And the outcomes of creating space for kids and being wrapped in love is this. When I started in this work, our graduation rates were about 20% for Native kids, and now they're over 80%. And actually last year we were at 97. But I'll be really honest, people get offended when I say this. I could kind of give a rat's ass about the data points. That's not what motivates me. I don't care about them. I know for funding and stuff that matters. But what I really care about is what my kids say. So I ask them, and this is in their words, especially my seniors, when they leave, their last assignment, if they choose to take it, is tell me what I need to know. Give me some feedback. What was helpful? What wasn't? The first one up there is a student, his name was Chris. He said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This was at graduation. I said, oh, yes, you would, Chris. You're so smart. You're great. And he said, no, Miss Boo, I wouldn't be here. And so I put him on top. I'm still in his life. He is working and doing well. But I don't mean to make it sound light or fluffy, but I just encourage you because you don't know the impact you're making. And having been working with youth for 28 years, I sometimes won't hear about differences that I've made. I'm now teaching the children of my first students, which is kind of great. But those interactions, man, we got to be with the kid in front of us at the moment. And I believe, for me, I believe it's like holy work. I mean, you can tell I'm fired up about kids, but they also say things like this class makes me feel more confident. I can be myself here. My God, look at number 3. Don't we all want to feel like that? Don't we all just want to be ourselves? I think about my own child and as she's figuring out who she is. If she said at her school, she could just be themselves. That's what we want, right? You always have my back and tell me to work hard and be proud. You made our son feel seen. You push us hard, and that always makes me mad, but it's good. There's those expectations high, support higher. You believed in me when I didn't. You managed to get me out of my comfort zone. I learned how to talk to teachers. Those are just some random things that I pulled from some of the things they write me. So if there was anything that you guys could take from just listening to this old teacher talk is this. Number 1, the work you do is so important. It's so valuable. And even if it seems like a small thing on the toughest of days, you being present and seeing those kids and fighting for them is life-changing. So I lift my hands to you and I thank you. And that is all I have. If there's questions, I can answer them, but I don't think I'm going to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boo. I'm going to stop the screen sharing so we can all see each other's faces and unspotlight you, or see the faces or names of those in the space.
Great. Anybody has questions? I can't see any of you because my computer's being bizarre, but I'm happy to answer questions. Or if you need to get a hold of me later, I'm sure your lovely hosts would be able to share that information with you.
I just want to say I am so happy you're able to join us again, Boo. Just that you bring such a grounding and energizing vibe into this space. And I just get so excited listening to you speak to the work that you do for the students that you serve. Your passion is so real. I've also added, we tried to capture takeaways and we were just dropping them left and right. So there's a lot in the chat, but I think what you did a great job of is just kind of sharing those little reminders of how not only to see your students, but how to see ourselves in the work as well. So I just want to say thank you so much. Happy to pass on information if it's okay with you to any folks that might come forward later in the training, but we know your time's super valuable. So thank you so much. Feel free to stay on if you want.
No, I've actually got kids standing outside my door right now. I put a piece of cardboard over the door with a sign that said I was doing this, and they're like, well, we're going to wait, which is wonderful and then not at the same time. I will say this, as I said, this is my 28th year working with kids, and it's such an honor to be part of their stories. And you guys, by the work you do, are part of their stories. And not all stories are pretty, but I do believe all stories are powerful. And I think that you are part of the potential to just do great things with kids. And we are always given so much negativity as people who work with youth. When people find out I'm a high school teacher, I get a little irritated. They say, "Oh, God bless you." And I always want to punch them and just be like, "Shut the hell up. What are you insinuating?" And so I've gotten a little snarky in my old age, y'all. What I do now is I look right at them in their face and I'll be like, "Oh no, the kids are great. It's adults I can't stand." And it's usually an adult who says it and they don't know how to respond to that. But I really raise my hands to all of you and I thank you for the work that you do. And I hope that you know it's valued and appreciated, even if all the messages we get from all over the place aren't always positive. That's just noise. Keep doing good work. And thank you. I'm out of here. Bye.
Thank you,
Take care,
Boo.
Boo. Thank you. Thanks again for bearing with us, Daniel especially. Our time's a little moved around, but I still see you, which brings me extreme joy. So for our next spotlight speaker, we would love to bring in Daniel, Development and Partnership Specialist with Oasis Youth Center. And they are going to be sharing their slides. So hopefully that's queued up and working okay on your end. And we're just going to give you the space and take it away. If we have time for questions, we'll probably spend about 15 minutes with you, Daniel. If we need a little more, we can have a little wiggle room. But thank you for joining us and so happy to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Great. And can you see my slides? Awesome. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm glad I got on a little early and got to hear Boo as well. I feel like my slides aren't as exciting and as hers were, but it was wonderful to be a part of that. And I'm also feeling fired up from it. But my name is Daniel. I use he or they pronouns. I'm the development and partnership specialist with Oasis, and I'm also our lead trainer. I've been with Oasis Youth Center for about 5 years. So yeah, let's get into it. So who are we? If you're not familiar with Oasis Youth Center, we were founded in 1985 by a group of concerned community members who really just wanted to create that space for queer youth. And help them cope with some of the discrimination and find support and community. We've been supported by the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department in the past, and we currently are fiscally sponsored by the Pierce County AIDS Foundation. So we're our own organization, but they kind of do the payroll and finances and things like that, and we have a close relationship with them. Oasis, since 1985 until 2014 was in private non-disclosed locations. So you kind of had to know somebody who knew somebody who knew a secret handshake to get connected to Oasis. And that was for the safety and confidentiality of our youth members. As you know, the social landscape changed, we felt it was important for Oasis to be out and proud. And in 2014, we co-located with the Rainbow Center in downtown Tacoma. So we share a space and we're a lot more easy to find. You can Google us and know where we are now. I want to talk a little bit about our programs and services. So we define ourselves as a drop-in resource and support center for LGBTQ and questioning youth, ages 11 to 24. So that means we provide programming 6 days a week where youth can come in and access a variety of programs as well as advocacy and support from peers and adults. We have a specialty program specifically for youth 11 to 14 where we support those folks and their families as well. And all of our programming focuses on 3 main tiers, which are advocacy, prevention, and leadership development. As I mentioned, our main location is in downtown Tacoma. We're co-located with the Rainbow Center. We also have a satellite location in Lakewood. We're at St. Mary's Episcopal Church out there, and we have our own private space. The entrance is kind of around the back, so it's a little more private. And we're right next to where the library was out there and across the street from Clover Park Schools, just for some location information. And we're in the process of developing and creating one in Puyallup as well. As I'm sure folks are aware, people and youth who are in more rural areas face a lot of barriers to accessing support. And so we're trying to ensure that they have places like Oasis to be themselves. We also operate a 24/7 crisis line for youth that's operated by Oasis staff members who are trained. We are not licensed mental health providers, but we do have a lot of support and training around crisis intervention and support. And we can refer on if needed. But you can access that number 24/7 again via call or text. Some of the specific programs and services we have for support, like I mentioned, we have various programs that are to engage youth in their different interests, as well as events. One of our biggest events is coming up in May. It's Queer Prom. So it's an LGBTQ inclusive prom experience. The youth get to help plan that through one of our leadership development programs and put that together. They're very excited. They decided to have a carnival themed prom this year. So think kind of under the big top. But yeah, so that's underway. We also offer a lot of peer and adult support through our programs, mentorship. We have a wide variety of representation in our volunteer base as well as staff. We can provide gender affirming resources to youth as well as connect them to other resources if they're interested in medical intervention and things like that. One of the programs that I think is honestly the coolest and I'm most excited that we have is our mental health voucher program. So we contract directly with mental health providers who are LGBTQ competent as determined by Oasis, and they can provide therapy to youth at no cost. So they accept our vouchers as payment, which is equivalent to $120 per session, so that we have a competitive rate, and they provide therapy and mental health support to youth direct. We can also do referrals and things like that, but the vouchers are great because if you have barriers to accessing mental health services, maybe they don't have insurance, maybe they're concerned about their parents knowing that they're accessing those services, they can go through the voucher program and not have those barriers. We also have a provider who provides therapy in the space. So if you have additional barriers like transportation, things like that, they can get to Oasis. They can get services here. And a lot of our providers, since the pandemic and following, also offer virtual sessions as well. We are also a crime victim support center, so we can offer emergency financial assistance to folks who have been hurt or harmed by crime. So that can be things like, maybe a youth had their laptop broken during, an assault or something like that. We can support that youth and replace that item so they don't have to bear financial burden in addition to the burden of being the victim of a crime. And we can also help with things like food support, as well as transportation, like bus tickets, anything we can't do in-house, so to speak. We have close community partners that we can refer out to for things like housing, education, employment, and legal resources. One of the exciting things about housing is that we're going to be partnering with the REACH Center and their ACT program to provide mental health supports to folks who are getting services through them for housing. But yeah, again, we ensure that all of our partners are LGBTQ competent and aware so that when we're referring youth out to them, we know that they're going to be getting affirming and accepting care and don't have to worry about discrimination and things like that, which can be a barrier for queer youth especially. I kind of alluded to some of this, but some of the ways that we support youth is by partnering with schools and community organizations. We provide trainings throughout the community, including things like this, where we talk about what OASIS does and the supports we offer, as well as LGBTQ competency and how to support queer youth, how adults can be allies, like that. And we also offer opportunities for youth voice to be heard. So at those trainings, we can have youth panels and they can speak on their experience because they're the experts in their experience, right? And we compensate them monetarily for their time as well. We attend community events and organizational meetings, coalitions, things like that, partner again with schools and other organizations to ensure that queer youth are receiving competent and compassionate care, and that also providers have access to support and training if needed. So some takeaways that we wanted to share this morning for folks is to just be a safe, patient, understanding, and supportive adult to youth, taking the time to listen and validate their concerns, really being a partner with them. We have a youth adult partnership at OASIS that recognizes that youth and adults can come together for shared learning, teaching, and action. And especially when we're doing advocacy work for youth, they need to be a part of that process. Creating a safe space for youth is huge. I know Boo was talking about, creating spaces for people to just exist. And that's a big part of what OASIS does as well through a lot of our programs. There's not a lot of places that exist for queer youth specifically. And so just providing them a space to just be themselves is really huge. We kind of joke a lot of times that when you come to OASIS, being queer is the least interesting thing about you. Whereas a lot of times youth experience, people, that's all they're interested in outside of places like OASIS. Only their identities, but here they can be a whole person. Being an active ally is important, so continuing to learn about the queer community, support and advocate. That can include things like sharing information about OASIS, the Rainbow Center, or other organizations that support youth with them. But yeah, so those are just a few of the takeaways we wanted to offer folks. There's some information on how to get connected to OASIS here. Our website is listed. If you have any questions or want to connect, this is our main OASIS email. You'll get kind of funneled to the perfect person depending on your questions or inquiries. And our phone number is there as well. You can call or text that number. But again, really OASIS exists to uplift and transform queer youth's lives so that they can thrive and provide that support. So anything that we can do to help you all achieve that mission and further that, we're happy to do. And a big part of that is really creating those spaces. And that was something that, kind of got me fired up as I was listening to Boo, because that's some of the biggest impacts that we can have for youth is just create that space and be a person that is supportive of them. Common story in the queer community is that people can think of one person who really saw them and supported them, which is beautiful, but I imagine a world where youth can think of an entire community that surrounded them, supported them, and uplifted them. So I hope we can create that together. But that's what I have. If folks have questions, happy to answer them and connect more, and I can also stick around as well.
Great. Thank you, Daniel.
Mhm.
I am got some love in the chat coming in. Sorry, I feel a cough coming on. Want to
No
just
worries.
say thank you so much for joining us today and sharing how we can better support LGBTQ youth. I want to open it up to the group like you already offered. Does anyone have any questions about ways that you in your role can better support queer youth in your community, or anything else that maybe Daniel would be able to support with today? I know Sammy was she's been collecting key takeaways and popping them in the chat. You had a beautiful set of slides, and Daniel, if you could email us those slides so we can include them in our slide deck when we send it out later, that would be awesome.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah.
I
Sammy?
can also share out we have a folder of digital resources that just talk about our different programs and services that I can share out as well, so people have access to that.
That would be awesome. Thank you. And we recognize, like, when we have these statewide trainings, you might be near Pierce County and you might be able to refer students to Oasis, and you might be further away from Pierce County and you might not be able to, but it's important to be able to see what resources are available to youth across the state, and then maybe that can kind of help you think about who to look for in your community, or where there may be a gap and there needs to be more people in your community doing the work.
Yeah, and I would say too, one of the things that the pandemic gave us, a silver lining in some ways, if you will, is the ability to connect in these ways. And so even if you are in a different area in the state, you can still provide resources and support to providers, and also help connect youth to resources that might be more local to them. We also have plans to still engage youth virtually in a virtual satellite. We're in the process of hiring, so we have some more staff capacity to do that, but that really allowed a lot of youth who face barriers, or maybe they're in more rural areas, to connect to resources like Oasis. So that's something that we're prioritizing still as well.
That's awesome. Love that that offer, and that you're able to give that support at a statewide level, not just for the folks directly in your community. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Sammy, I feel like you keep like almost saying something and then I jump in. So
No, we're totally good. I'm just moving around a lot, feeling excited about today.
just bopping.
Thank you, Daniel. So good. I guess I do have something to say. I'm always joking about how I don't, and I always do. Daniel, thank you for bringing your expertise into this space as well. I feel like we really got kind of the trifecta today. Hearing from our guest speakers just on really how to see these big pictures of what students are going through, and also kind of have this opportunity to see how to connect those different identities that students are showing up with, really how to meet the needs in that as holistically as we possibly can. I think this was a great time today, kind of walking through all of that together. So just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining. We so appreciate you. Okay, Joey, I'm done.
Yes, just echoing what Sammy shared. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to all of our other guest speakers. So we are nearing the end of our training, and typically what we do at this point is we would go into breakout room. I do just recognize, like, we are kind of a smaller group today, which I think opens up the opportunity to just do a whole group discussion. We can all learn and share from each other. I do invite you, if you are able to, please turn on your camera so we can see your faces. That's really helpful when in a discussion point. And I just want to kind of open up the space. You know, we still have Daniel and Tracy on the call, so if you have any other questions that have arisen directly for them, this could be a time, Jamie, for us to continue that conversation on supporting those students, or anything else that has come up for you today, listening to our speakers, going over some of our different topics. Yeah, just really anything that you want to put into the group. I encourage use the raise hand function, just so we can kind of jump around with each other. But if you unmute and start responding, like, that's how a conversation works. So I'm not gonna overmanage that. Open it up. What are people feeling, thinking? What questions do you have, or reactions?
I just want to say thank you to all of you and the speakers. For me, it's my first time attending this training, and it's just so grateful to be here and get all this information that can help me to be advocate for my students, and also to share that with my colleagues, because many times, as Mrs. Boo said, adult is the hard part to work with, not the kids.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing that. I'm glad that you have you're taking some takeaways today that you're excited to share with others. I love what Booth shared with the it's actually not the kids that are difficult to work with, it's the adults. And that's just let's be honest, that's just a fact. So just really want to lift that up, but also appreciating the adults that we do have in this space, because you're putting in the work and trying to not be that barrier that's difficult to work with by being here today. So thank you. Does anyone else have any reactions, wonderings, takeaways that you'd like to share today? You can just unmute as well. We can do away with the hand raise.
I think I was just encouraged to make sure I know who the point of contact liaison is, to double check my knowledge, so then I know who to ask for, referral or whatnot. So it's a good, I appreciated that.
Awesome. And Rachel, what district are you in?
I'm in Lopez Island School District. So we're very small, but it actually sometimes makes it more complicated because a lot of people wear so many different hats that you don't realize all of the things they do. And so I realized I think it's the counselor, but I'm not sure. So I need to make sure to, touch base.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Maria, I want to highlight, I believe in the chat, I saw you're from Pasco. I've been working closely with your McKinney-Vento team over there, Amy and Elsie, and they are awesome. So if you'd like to connect, I can also make sure you're connected with them. I realize I have that connection for you if you'd like it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right, Sammy just dropped the McKinney-Vento liaison list again. This is hosted by OSPI, so it is updated as best as people update it, right? So I think folks, when somebody new comes into a role in their district, have to resubmit who their contact is for this list. So you may look at it and be like, that person's not here. Then that's a cue to your district to make sure to submit a new liaison for that contact list. Yeah, it's hard to keep contact lists up to date, y'all. It's always moving and changing.
I will say they do try to do a really great job with that one. So we hope that will lead to connection if it's a need. I was going through the chat and I did see something that came up during Eric and Tracy's part. Tracy, just to bring you in, and kind of a bigger question from Jamie, but they had asked, how can we get active folks working in our school? We need folks like you all. I know there isn't we don't have to drive down into budget lines and things like that, but I did hear that come up through Boo's part, just talking about if you want it, fund it, And so I just kind of from your role with the district over the years, how, what advice could you give to Jamie or just folks on the call on how to advocate, for roles like yours in the school? I will own my limitations in school psychologist presence. I don't know if it's per building, per district, different, across the state, but just kind of, what do you think about that? If you're showing up strong in Tacoma, but Jamie's I really would love similar support? What would you recommend?
Well, know that every building does have a school psychologist. So most of the time, school psychologists are assigned to more than one building unless they're at secondary and they have a really large, and I guess high school. They're typically, that's the only, most districts are only going to have one, have a psychologist full-time at a high school. The rest of us typically have two, they try to limit it to 2 buildings, sometimes 3 programs. So we get spread kind of thin. We're trying to work on that. There's a national shortage of us. Most school psychs really want to do more than just evaluate test kids. And so just know that you can seek out the school psychologist. Most of us are really open. We're a wealth of information. We're going to be open to questions, helping point people in the right direction. So we're just another resource in your building, and you can use us. We want to be useful to teams, to parents, to staff. I don't know if that answered the question, but there are school psychs in every building. Were there other specific questions?
I do think that's a great frame, because I don't know that I was 100% familiar with that. I just out of curiosity, Tracy, if I'm in a district working and I haven't met with my school psychologist, like what would be the best way to connect with them?
I think just like if you know someone in the building, just asking, who's your school psychologist here? Can you give me, most of us, we've been in this traditional role of testing students and writing reports. And we're trying really hard to break out of that. So a lot of people just see us as a tester and report writer, but there's so much more that we can do. It gets tricky because there's also a shortage of us. We're pretty well staffed in Tacoma, and we're working on getting our caseloads down, but most of us are really open to doing lots of other things. So we want to be seen. We want to be used as seen as a useful resource for buildings, for teams. So I would just ask, who's your school psychologist? And if they're not I was just going to add, if they're not at a meeting that you think maybe their expertise would be helpful at that meeting, you can always request, why isn't the school psychologist here? Should they be part of this conversation?
I think I recalled when you were speaking earlier, something that I really loved to hear was just, jumping to that like prescriptive thing of like, we just want to find a way to understand students, but oftentimes the work that you're doing is really kind of understanding what's going on like with them, and not just jumping to that kind of, you're holding this label, or this is how we're going to, diagnose. I think there's so many cool connections that could happen across the district through the work that you all are doing, as well as Daniel's work, as well as Boo's work. So just kind of really thinking about how powerful that is to hear. You're like, I'm not just in the business of trying to do this, transactional stuff. I really want to see students thrive, and I want to advocate, for what they're going through. I think that is a shared value. And I think was really great to hear.
Yeah. I think just picking up on a similar theme to what Sammy just shared, like a lot of what I'm hearing and seeing from our speakers today and what's been shared by the group is the importance of kind of knowing who your champions are, who in your district or your community is who's kind of like, who's doing the work, and how can you connect with them and then kind of continue to partner and build that work into more of a team, because it really is, like Sammy said at the beginning, like it does take a village. It is a team effort to support our students and our families. So really thinking about who are those connections that you can make, who's doing the work, and how can you uplift and support each other to continue that work. I think that we have about a minute left. So we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna share screens just briefly one more time. Not sure where that accent came from, sorry. This is our closing, one of our closing slides here. So just a reminder, please complete that Survey Monkey. That is super helpful for us to continue to improve our trainings, as well as to hear from you what you took away from today, what went well, what could have gone better. Zoom could have gone better, I'll own that. And again, if you're seeking clock hours through PD Enroller, please do so through do the survey through PD Enroller. The attendance should be posted in the next week. And if anything gets wonky with that, feel free to email me and I'll connect you with our PD Enroller contact at OSPI. Join our School Housing Network. We meet monthly to talk about all things school housing, student support related. Our next meeting is April 20th, I think, 1 to 2 p.m. It's third Thursdays of every month. We are going to have the Healthcare Authority actually come join us, talking about changes that have been made to Medicare, Medicaid, and the different ways that that is impacting our families and enrollment that needs to happen around that. We've got 8 more trainings left because this is number 20. Join us if you have not for those. And we also have recordings of previous trainings on our website if there's a topic you're interested in that has passed. And then, like Sammy said, we've got, or like we shared earlier, we've got our School Housing Community Partnership convening on the May 19th. Join us for that if you are able. And that's what we got for you today. Thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you so much to our guest speakers. Here is our contact info. Our colleague Marette is on there. She's also a wealth of knowledge. And the Homeless Ed at OSPI, if you have McKinney-Vento specific questions, they are a great resource to connect with. So thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.